morning class. In yesterday's lecture, we have understood the phenomena of corrosion and the basic science leading to the corrosion in metals. In today's class, we will going to study different types of corrosion, and we will also understand how you can prevent or minimize these corrosion types that is prevailing in the industrial environment. When you try to categorize corrosion depending on their types, large number of corrosions are possible that can occur in materials. In this particular course, we cannot cover all different type of corrosions. Therefore, we restrict ourselves to 11 different types of corrosion that we will going to study in detail, which are prominent in the industrial environment. The first category of corrosion that we are interested in is called uniform or general attack corrosion. As the name suggests, in this kind of corrosion, the chemical reaction proceeds uniformly on the entire metal surface exposed to the corrosive environment. It often leaves behind a scale or deposit, which you can see in the picture. This kind of corrosion represents the greatest destruction of metals. Most of the metal undergoes uniform corrosion. It is also the most common form of corrosion. It is also the least objectionable because it can be predicted and designed with relative ease. So although uniform corrosion is the most common one, most abundant in all metal forms, but still it is least objectionable because you can predict it, and once you can predict it, then you can find ways to prevent metals from undergoing uniform corrosion. The general rusting on the steel and iron or tarnishing of silverwares are the common examples of general attack corrosion. All of us have encountered or experienced these kind of corrosion in our daily life. Now the question is how one can prevent metals from undergoing uniform corrosion. There are three different ways by which you can approach for this problem. The first one is making a protective coating on the surface of the metal. The most common way of creating a protective coating on the surface of the metal is simply painting the metal. So likewise, you can create a protective layer on the surface of the metal. Second one is use inhibitors. Inhibitors are special chemical compounds which you can disperse when the metal or alloy is being formed. These inhibitors changes the basic characteristic of the metal and minimizes its tendency to undergo uniform corrosion. The third mechanism by which you can prevent uniform corrosion is called cathodic protection. In our yesterday's class, we have understood that whenever there is a two metal in physical contact with each other, then one of them will act as anode and the other one will going to behave as cathode. The one which is chemically more active becomes anode, while the one that is chemically least active becomes the cathode. and in this junction the anode gets oxidized and hence get corroded while the cathode remains protected. So you can use this idea to also prevent corrosion in the metal by connecting the metal piece whose corrosion you want to prevent, by connecting it with another metal which will going to act as a sacrificial material by becoming an anode, and the material under interest with reference to that anode is now a cathode, and hence it will remain protected. We will going to discuss cathodic protection more in detail at a later stage. The second kind of corrosion that we want to study is called galvanic corrosion. It is also named as two metal corrosion. We have understood the phenomena of galvanic corrosion in yesterday's class. In general, when two metals or alloys are in physical contact with each other, or they are electrically connected with each other in the presence of an electrolyte, the material undergoes corrosion, and that kind of corrosion is being referred as the galvanic corrosion. In galvanic corrosion, the less noble or more reactive metal in a given environment will undergo corrosion, while the inert material which is acting as a cathode will remain protected. For example, steel screws corrode when in contact with brass in a marine environment, because the electrochemical potential of steel is higher as compared to the electrochemical potential of the brass. So steel will become anode and hence get corrode, while brass becomes cathode and hence remain protected. If you have copper and steel tubing, which is generally being joined in a domestic water heater, the steel will undergo corrosion in the vicinity of the junction, because between a copper and steel junction, your steel will act as anode while copper remains protected as it behaves as if it is a cathode. So while defining amongst the two metal which will going to act as an anode and act as cathode, you have to look at the electrochemical series which we have seen in yesterday's class. So if you have forgot, go back to that particular slide and again refresh your understanding. So in general, if I have a junction of two metal, the one which is less noble will be anode and hence will get corrode, while the one which is more noble will become a cathode and hence remains protected. Galvanic or two metal corrosion can be prevented by following means. The simplest and easiest one is, if you have coupling of dissimilar metal necessary, choose two metals that are close together on the galvanic series. Closer are the two elements in the galvanic series, smaller will be the difference in their electrode potential, and smaller is the difference in the electrode potential, smaller will be the rate of corrosion. So the best circumstances is one should try to avoid using junction of dissimilar metals. If you cannot avoid it in your design, then you should try to choose metals which are as close as possible in the electrochemical series. Another important thing that one should keep in mind as a design engineer is you should try to avoid unfavorable anode to cathode surface area ratio. Use anode area as large as possible. Why it is so? Because if you remember, yesterday we have defined the corrosion rate, and the corrosion rate R was proportional to the current density I. So if you have a smaller anode area, then your current density will be very high, and hence your corrosion rate will also be very high. Instead, if you increase the surface area, then your current density will get decrease, and since the current density decreases, your corrosion rate will also decrease. So in this way, simply by increasing the anode area, you can reduce the corrosion rate. The third option is to electrically insulate dissimilar metals. If you can somehow electrically insulate the metal junction, then there will be no galvanic potential between the metals, and thus you can control the corrosion. Now, whether you can electrically insulate the metal junction or not, that depends on many other circumstances that goes into your design. So, in many situations, solution by electrical insulation of the junction may not be a possibility because of other restrictions. The fourth possible way is you can electrically connect a third anodic material to the other two metals, and these form a cathodic protection. So let's say you have metal B and C which is interconnected. B becomes anode, C is cathode, so C is already protected, but B as an anode will undergo corrosion. Now you also want B to be protected. So what you can do is you can connect B with another third metal, let's call it A. The electrochemical potential of A is such that it is greater than B. So now with reference to B, A becomes anode, and hence A will get corrode. You must have question in your mind, then what happens with the A? A we are using intentionally in our design as a sacrificial material, so it sacrifices itself, undergoes corrosion, and protects important portion of your design, which is B and C. Another important phenomena which one should keep in mind is the area effect. The rate of galvanic attack depends on the cathode anode area. This is for a given area of cathode, a smaller anode will corrode more rapidly than a larger one. This I have already explained. If you have smaller area, then you will have greater current density. If you have larger area, then you will have smaller current density. So smaller current is always the intention of ours in the design, because it minimizes your corrosion reaction rate. The third kind of corrosion in which we are interested is called pitting corrosion. As the name suggests, these kind of corrosion will going to produce pits on the surface of the metal. It is also a localized corrosion leading to the corrosive attack, which produces holes or pits in the metal. Depth and number of pits varies from metal to metal and environment to environment. Generally, it requires an initiation period for pitting to appear on the metal surface. The difficulty with pitting corrosion is once it is started, pits grows at an ever increasing rate, and then it is difficult to control this kind of corrosion. Generally, pits grows in the direction of gravity, and mostly it appears on the lower surfaces of the equipment, which is generally least visible. It is a very destructive kind of corrosion, leads to the perforation of the metals. Pits are initiated at places where local increase in corrosion rate occurs. Why only a particular portion of the metal gets corroded? It is because the pit forms at a location where there is a local inhomogeneity in its chemical composition. So at that particular point, your corrosion rate is much higher as compared to the rest of the region because of the structural or compositional heterogeneities present at that local point. Those points undergo faster corrosion and forms pits and holes. How one can prevent pitting corrosion? You can do this by using metals which do not show tendency to form pits. So one can use materials with non-pitting tendency. Now, the important question is whether your design parameters allow that or not, that one needs to keep looking. If that is a possibility, that is the best solution. If that is not a possibility, then what else you can do is you can put 2% molybdenum into your steel, which gives still the resistance again pitting. So you can minimize the tendency of steel forming the pits by making 2% molybdenum steel. At last, before using any material in your design, you should conduct the pitting test so that you can primarily know whether the material of your choice has tendency to form pits or not. The fourth category of corrosion is called crevice corrosion. As the name suggests, this corrosion is prevailing in regions where there are small air gaps, mainly in the crevice regions of bolted joints. So, uh, crevice corrosion is also a localized corrosion in recesses, especially in the overlapping zones for riveting, bolting, or welding. You can see two metal plates are here riveted, and in between them there is a small air gap. So liquids can flow in this region and produces corrosion into this crevice region. These zones are also called crevices, are very tiny and difficult to access for the aqueous liquid that is covering the rest of the readily accessible surface. So since it's a very narrow region, generally access to that region is not available with the user. This type of corrosion is also known as deposit attack because there will be a continuous deposit of rust that is taking place into that crevice region. In many aqueous environment, the solution within the crevice has been found to develop high concentrations of H plus and Cl minus ions, which is typically present in the marine environment. This H plus and Cl minus ions presence make them more corrosive. So materials like stainless steel, aluminum and copper alloys undergoes rapid corrosion in the marine environment. Many alloys that passivate are susceptible to crevice corrosion because protective films are often destroyed by H plus and Cl minus ions. This is very important. Generally, to prevent corrosion, the easiest approach is to passivate the surface. Now, even if you have used the passivation mechanism to prevent corrosion, the presence of H plus and Cl minus ions can easily remove the protective area and makes them vulnerable to the crevice corrosion. So, what one can do to prevent crevice corrosion? You can see representative examples of the crevice corrosion where you can see a lot of corrosion byproduct has been formed beneath the rivet or screw. So what one can do, you should try to minimize joints in your design, especially welded or bolted joints. So any riveted or bolted joints can be replaced with a welded joint. One can use non-absorbing gaskets like Teflon wherever possible. So it minimizes the segregation of aqueous materials into the crevice region. One should make frequent cleaning of such region by removing the accumulated deposits. Especially in the marine designs, this may not be possible to achieve very frequently. The fourth possibility is designing containment vessels to avoid stagnant areas and ensure complete drainage. This is the best possible solution. You have to make sure in your design you have least number of such areas in your vessel design. With this, you can minimize the crevice corrosion. The fifth category of corrosion type is called intragranular corrosion. As the name suggests, this kind of corrosion takes place between the grains at the grain boundaries. It occurs preferentially along the grain boundaries for some alloys under specific environment. The overall result of intragranular corrosion is at macroscopic scale, the specimen disintegrates from the grain boundary region. This type of corrosion is especially prevalent in stainless steels, especially when the stainless steel is being heated at an intermediate temperature range of 500 to 800 degree centigrade for a sufficiently long time. When you heat steels at this temperature, they become sensitized for intragranular attack, and therefore this temperature window is also called the sensitizing temperature range. When you heat stainless steel, it permits the formation of small precipitates of particles of chromium carbide by reaction between the chromium and carbon which is present as constituent of the steel. These particles form along the grain boundaries. So what happens when you start heating the steel? The chromium and carbon diffuse from the material into the grain boundaries and forms chromium carbide particles, which is preferentially gets deposited on the grain boundary. This results into the region surrounding the grain boundary depleted with chromium and makes them susceptible to mechanical failure. Uh, the classic example of intragranular corrosion is weld decay. If you are making the steel joints by welding, you are heating the metal in the sensitized temperature zone, and this leads to the formation of chromium carbide particles at the joint regions, and this could lead to the failure of the material from those joints, which is also being referred as weld decay. Now we are discussing how one can prevent the intragranular corrosion. This kind of corrosion is severe in the welding of stainless steels, where it is often termed as weld decay. Stainless steel may be protected from intragranular corrosion by using the following measures. Number one, subjecting the sensitized material to a high temperature heat treatment, that is heating followed by a water quenching, in which all the chromium carbide particles are redissolved. So one way is, once you make a weld joint, give the heat treatment at an elevated temperature above the sensitized temperature, and then quickly water quenched it. This process redissolved the formed chromium carbide particles back, uniformly distributes the chromium into the material, and overcomes the problem of intragranular corrosion. If the heat treatment at elevated temperature is not possible, then you can lower the carbon content in the steel below 0.038%. By doing so, you minimize the possibility of formation of your corrosive byproduct, which is chromium carbide in this case. So you are basically removing the carbon content to a below a threshold level, so carbides are not able to form. The possibility whether you can minimize the carbon content or not depends on many other factors. So you need to put those factors into your design criteria, and still, if your design criteria allows this, you should do that. The third possibility is alloying the stainless steel with other metals such as niobium or titanium, which has greater tendency to form carbides than does chromium. So now there will be a competition between chromium and niobium or titanium, and since niobium and titanium has greater tendency to form carbides, they will form carbides, keeps the uniform deposition of chromium throughout the steel, and do not uh, impact negatively on the mechanical characteristic of the steel. So in summary, what we have understood in today's class is uniform corrosion is most common type of corrosion and universally found. Crevice corrosion is due to the overlapping layers between two metals with a very small narrow opening. Pitting corrosion cannot be avoided once started, and hence it is one of the most devastating kind of corrosion. Smaller anode area will have more corrosion than the larger anode area. So you can use larger anode areas in your design to minimize the corrosion rate. Weld decay is the corrosion due to sensitization at high temperature in the temperature window of 500 to 800 degree centigrade. If you cannot avoid the weld joints in your design, you should either give the heat treatment at higher temperature, or you can use steels which contains either niobium or titanium to avoid weld decay in your solid. This is all for today's class. In tomorrow's class, we will going to discuss couple of more type of corrosions and approaches to prevent them. Thank you.